I think
It's
like
hard.
'cause we both really loved it. It just didn't fit the landscape of what things became, and it
Yeah.
suddenly like threw the album out of balance. But I think
Mm.
that's something that's cool that we can, the fact that we have kind of made all our mistakes and we've spent not all of them, I'm sure, but a lot of mistakes already, and we've learned a lot about how to make an album and balance an album and do all that. Like that maturity hopefully will make the record better, and then we'll find another outlet for that song.
Hi, Kate. How are you?
Great. How are you doing?
I'm fantastic. I appreciate you doing this.
Of course. Yeah. Yeah. We're excited. This is so fun.
Awesome. Is Michael joining us as
He
well?
is. Yeah. He's
Okay.
joining. I'll shoot him a text. Just he's joining from Austin and I'm here in LA. So
Oh, right on.
yeah. So we've got like, it's funny. We actually started this project over Zoom. This is kind of like
Oh, here he
perfect.
is.
Every time we do a nice, yeah, Zoom interview, I'm like, oh, it's awesome.
Back to your roots.
Back to our roots. Totally. Yes.
That's
So
amazing.
yeah.
Oh, come on. Here in a minute. You're in LA. Wow, it's early for you.
You know what? It's all good. It's good. Like it's good for me. Honestly, sometimes it's better because I get my day started early and then I'm like, oh yeah, this is like what people are talking about when you get up at
Get it.
6 and like you could do a lot of shit, you
You're
know?
right, 100%. Hey,
So
Michael, how are you?
Good. What's up, man? How you doing? Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. I'm Adam, by the way.
Nice to meet
Um,
you, Adam. The
yeah.
I went and saw Nate Bargatze last night, and he was like talking
Oh,
about like traveling overseas, and he was like, when you wake up at like 5 a.m. and you're not used to it, like 12 noon is so far away from
right.
so far away.
you're like, what is going on when you start getting up early?
That's
So,
funny, man. I'm in Nashville now, and I think isn't Nate Bargatze from Nashville?
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
somewhere in Tennessee, something. The
that's funny.
Yeah, I'm in Austin actually.
Oh, cool. Right
Yeah.
on. Austin
Are
and LA.
Yeah, it's funny. I thought, are you friends with the guys from Madden Management? Because I see you have like all of their folks on, like Bad Omens and Leah Kate, and a bunch of
Oh,
people are all
yeah.
from
Well,
them.
I have I have a connection to through their company. I don't know them personally,
Got it.
but I work with a lot of their people and their PR and everything else. So
Got it. That's awesome.
God.
They're
yeah,
great. They're the coolest management
yeah,
company around.
very
Um,
very cool. Well, I appreciate the both of you doing this. Awesome. So this is a podcast about uh, you all and your journeys in music. I kind of want to get like just origin stories and then how you met, and then obviously this project. And Kate was saying earlier that it really kind of started this way
Over
via
yeah.
Zoom.
Zoom.
I mean, it's a lot. It's a lot of there's a lot of ground to cover there. If you want both mine and Kate's origin stories and how we met and everything, it's a wild ride. So
It's
buckle
a
up.
wild ride, indeed.
Oh,
Buckle up.
well, I would love to
Yeah.
hear it. Awesome. So cool. So, Kate, we'll start with you. I saw you're from where? Cleveland area. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
my
Cleveland,
family is
Ohio.
originally from Cleveland. I was born in San Diego, but my parents are both from Cleveland, so we'd go back all the
Nice.
time.
That's awesome. Yeah, there's a lot of us in Southern California, us Ohio folks, because it's like
Yeah.
great place to be from. But then you're like, I think I'm finished with the blizzards like
Yeah,
that.
the snow.
Yeah, happened in April and stuff. Like it's over. That's rad. Love it.
Yeah, cool. So, what part of Cleveland did you grow up in?
Like the west side, little
Okay.
suburb called Bay Village. So, close to the lake, just very much that kind of childhood, riding bikes around, being a kid, all that good stuff. But it's a cool city, man. It gets people love to kind of it's sort of the butt of jokes sometimes, but it's a cool city. It's a birthplace of rock and roll, we
Yeah.
got like Tracy Chapman. It's a cool city.
Yeah, no, 100%. My family they grew up in Elyria and then
Oh,
Lorain
nice.
County. I don't know how close that is
That's like, I
to
think, on the west side-ish.
It is
Yeah.
the west side. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
That's
awesome.
awesome. Yeah. It's a good spot. Good people.
What about music? When did you get into music? Or as far as like performing, playing, do you come from like a creative or musical household at all?
Very much. Yeah. My dad is an incredible musician and songwriter, actually. It
Oh,
was never his main job. But he had me, learning about rhythm from Michael Jackson cassette tapes when I was little, like listening to the Beatles and all this stuff. And so, when I I was always a musical kid in choir and band and all that stuff. And then I wanted to, start playing the guitar in high school because my dad, I'd grown up with him and my mom singing me to sleep, singing James Taylor tunes, Carole King, stuff like that. And so he taught me to play and write songs in high school, bought me a little 4-track recorder, and it was sort of off to the races from there. And so they have been such a cool, part of my story in terms of, inspiration, but also just support, like
Mhm.
coming from a small town in Ohio, especially like in the early mid 2000s, it wasn't, like I didn't necessarily expect to have access to the possibility of making this my career. And so they were very cool and supportive, driving me to, my first tours, they lent me their minivan, like it was cool to have that, as part of my story. But yeah, definitely a creative family in many ways.
That's awesome. So dad was helping you like or taught you really how to write songs early on? That's so cool.
Yeah, he, like I kind of learned by doing in a lot of ways, but I also just remember growing up that my dad would play coffee houses on the weekend sometimes, like when he wasn't super busy with his development job, it was cool. And it was cool to be able to see that be something that he still nurtured, something he loved to do. And he wrote music and he always had, cool recording stuff in our basement and would let me use it now and then for school projects. If, we were making up a song, I always had like the coolest project and shit like that, so
Yeah.
it was a natural kind of, thing. Once I got old enough to be interested, he was like, oh yeah, here's how you use a 4-track and here's what, a chorus is like, and that's different from a verse. And so, always been grateful for that.
That's amazing. And then you put out a record, right? Like or you were what, still in high school, I think,
Yeah, so I got
age-wise.
signed. I put out like an EP in high school. Started playing all my shows when I was like 16, around Cleveland. We'd drive to Pittsburgh, we'd drive to Chicago, all this stuff. Showcased for a bunch of record labels in high school. Ended up signing a deal my freshman year in
Jeez.
college.
Oh, okay. But still, that's so
Yeah.
early.
No, not my freshman year in high school, man. Yeah. But yeah, it was like this thing that was building. And then I signed my first deal when I was, I guess, 18, 19, and then left college to make a record in LA. And it, that was the days of touring in the minivan and, kind of just doing the thing, selling CDs out of the van
Mhm.
and playing random clubs with a bunch of dudes, in my parents' minivan. And then, yeah, that was kind of where it all started. But it was, when I look back now, I'm like, oh my gosh, that was so young to start. But I remember feeling behind, like, oh my gosh, I gotta, but it was, yeah, they were fun years, of kind of cutting my teeth on just the grassroots clubs and all that stuff.
Sure. Did you end up moving permanently to LA when you're, recording that record, or were you kind of going back and forth to Cleveland?
I kind of back and forth. Yeah, I was honestly on tour so often that it was like, I was like, it doesn't make sense for me to pay for my own apartment, and I was
Right.
also still young enough that I was kind of freaked out about like moving away already. And I had been a student in college, so that was sort of my other full-time residence, like I
Mhm.
still had this dorm room that, now and then I would go back and finish some classes. So, yeah, I started touring after I left, was on the road for like 3 or 4 months, and then I ended up rolling through while I was in LA this audition for the part of a musician on this TV show that featured a lot of musicians. And I
Mhm.
heard if I got the part, I could play a song. And I was like, well, that would be sweet. My manager at the time was like, you should do this, even if you don't get it or you're not good, like whatever, just go.
Yeah.
And it was this show called One Tree Hill on the CW. I got the part and thought, cool, I'll get to play one of the songs from my album. I had released my album with MySpace Records, which, throwback. But MySpace
That's
had a record
awesome. I
label.
didn't even remember that, but it was like affiliated
No.
with Interscope or something, wasn't it?
It
Didn't have
was.
a
It was
big
affiliated with
backing.
Interscope. So I knew if I sell enough of these indie albums, MySpace is going to upstream me to Interscope. And that was what I wanted. I wanted to be on a major label. I knew that was sort of how you got, where you needed to go. And so MySpace was this awesome team, just indie, people who loved music. And
Mhm.
So it was a really good vibe. We put out this album together, went toward like crazy, got this part on the show, and then 4 months later, the show aired. My first song aired. I sold, I think, 20,000 albums that first week and got upstreamed immediately. And so it was like a wild ride, but pretty cool.
That's crazy. Like having that song on One Tree Hill, probably that drew obviously attention to you, I would imagine, kind of right away.
Yeah, it was
As far as that
totally
goes, and
unexpected.
in that big of a sphere. That's so cool.
Right.
And then you were on the show for a while, right? As a musician. That's cool.
Yeah, and then I thought it was going to be one episode because that was kind of what it was slated for. And then I ended up playing, I think, 11 or 12 songs over the course of 4 seasons. So it turned into a total detour. But the cool thing was that the songs that the character sang, you know, the character was named Mia. It wasn't Kate Voegele, but
Right.
her songs were my songs. So it was an
Yeah.
amazing way to connect with, I mean, one of the most dedicated audiences. Like the fans of that show are unbelievably, you know, loyal and supportive. And it was really an amazing sort of coincidence to, you know, because it could have been, who knows what the fan, you know,
Right.
it just connected, which I was, you know, really grateful for.
Huge. And that's where you met Michael, correct?
That's where I met
That's
Mike.
right.
Yep.
All right, Michael.
Mhm.
So let's start with you. And I just the internet's burned me a million times, but you're from Virginia, is that what I saw?
Yeah, Richmond, Virginia.
Richmond. Tell me about growing up there, and I know that you had very musical upbringing from what I've read.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I was raised by musicians, like almost like being raised by wolves. Like, my parents were church musicians, and I actually learned to read music, like as I learned to read English. Like everything happened
So
kind of at
wild.
the same time, and it was one of those like kind of weird. Like we would sight read hymns in the morning, and we would, like all that kind of stuff. It was a very it was like music boot camp from birth, uh,
Hmm.
which was cool. I started playing piano when I was like 5 years old, and was on like the classical, route with like the teacher who would like hit my hands with a ruler and the whole
Oh
thing.
man.
Yeah, it was pretty wild.
How long did you end up were you like in band and all that stuff through school? Was that like your main thing?
Yeah, I played. So my mom was actually the music teacher at my school as well. So she taught at my elementary school, then she taught at my middle school. I think she just didn't want me to go to school alone.
She just moved up.
Yeah, she just kept going, and she threatened to go to my high school, and I was like, no, I can't have it. Um, yeah, so finally got freedom there, but yeah, I played in band because I didn't want to be in choir because my mom was the choir teacher. So I played the French horn and was like just literally the biggest nerd of all the band nerds. Um and then I kind of found out, so like through the church thing, like because I could play piano, then I started playing piano for like the youth group kind of stuff. And then
Hmm.
one day they were like, "Hey, we need as many people to sing this thing as possible." And I was like, okay, like I can sing it or whatever. And I sang it, and then everyone was like, you should you should sing more, man. Like you should be a singer. And I was like, oh, I'm just the piano player because I never thought I would be a singer. So, um, but yeah, then I started singing too, and yeah, one thing kind of led to another.
Wow. And did you write song like what age were you writing songs? 'Cause it sounds like, Kate was doing that early on. 16 puts a record out, but were you doing that as well? Were you writing your own songs?
It never really occurred to me that I could. Like
Okay.
just didn't realize it was something that humans could do. Like, you know what I mean? I thought it
Mhm.
was just these special people wrote songs and that was it. And I was there to like play their songs. So like, the first time I actually wrote a song was when I moved to New York. I was living in Queens, and my roommate at the time was like writing a song. He was like, "Hey, can you help me finish this?" And I was like, "Sure, let's do it." And like knocked it out in a couple of minutes. He was like, "You're pretty like that's a good like you're pretty good at that." And I was like, "Oh, really?" Like I didn't think I could do that. And then I started my first band kind of shortly after, and yeah, and found out that writing was actually kind of like my happy place.
Okay. Was that was Wakey Wakey the first band you started, or was that later down the line?
No, I had like a long series of bands. My story is like the opposite of Kate's story, which is like kind of like Kate basically got to, stepped into the music world like really successfully at a young age, which I think is like got to be hard in so many other ways. Like for
Sure.
me, I was like basically a bartender in Brooklyn for like, 10 years before I ever had any sort of break. And I just played at open mics, and I, went around and tried to figure it out. And before I got my first break as an artist.
Okay. And tell me about, yeah, getting that first break.
So I was playing at an open mic, and there was a woman there that I'd never seen there before, and I really wanted to hit on her, and and I didn't know how, and so I went over to my friend that ran the open mic, and I was like, put me up next, I want to like sing so I can then talk to this
Impress
woman
this, yeah,
after.
this lady.
Yeah, and I did, and and so the woman was sitting at the bar, and I like went over to talk to her, and she was like, "Hey, I'm gonna stop you right there. Like, I've got a giant like engagement ring on, but I write for this television show on Tree Hill, and I think your music would be perfect for it." And So she was like, "Can you just, you know, basically like 2 weeks from now, I'm going to be back here with the creator of the show, and if you could just do the exact same, I'm going to bring him to this open mic, and you just play the same two songs and see what happens." And I did, and the rest is kind of history. They really liked the music, and it's funny because I was really at the end of my rope. But I was in my early 30s already, and I was like, I'm not gonna ever make it as a musician. And I actually called my mom and told her that I was quitting music.
Wow.
And then like literally 2 days later, my song was on, on the show. And it was such a massive placement. It was like probably the biggest placement I've ever had. And the next day, that song was like number 13 on the iTunes charts. And I called my mom, and I was like, "Psych, I'm gonna do music."
I'm staying with this.
Yeah.
Well, so you just was your song, it was just synced into the episode. Didn't you ended up being on the show though, right? Weren't you?
Yeah. So they synced two songs at that point, and then like when I finished my first record, I basically reached out again and was like, "Hey, I got this new record," and the creator actually like flew out to New York to listen to it in the studio with me, and just on the spot pitched this whole idea that he was gonna write me a role on the show. And it's funny because like the whole time, like I was always like a bartender in New York, and I worked at this place, Schiller's Liquor Bar, that was like a pretty cool bar.
Mhm.
And whenever the cast came to New York for like dailies and stuff, they would all come to my bar. And so I kind of became friends with everyone from the cast first. So I kind of like backdoored it so that way, I guess. Um, and so he basically just wrote my life story onto the show. He was like, "You're going to play a bartender that no one knows is a musician, and then we're going to reveal that you're a musician on this one episode." And yeah, it was crazy. I mean, like they synced pretty much every song from that record to that season of the show. Like, so every single episode, I had another big sync. And then at the end of the
Wow.
season, they like halfway through, they revealed that I was a musician. They like wrote me this role as a bartender where I was like a nice guy, and everyone, they made me a very likable character. And then
Mhm.
they like revealed that I was a bartender, or that I was a musician. And yeah, it that day everything kind of changed. It all blew up real quick.
Wow. Did you meet Kate at that bar like beforehand? Like were you on the show, Kate, and then would go there during these off hours?
No, I never got to go to your bar during the One
Oh.
Tree Hill years. No.
Never came. It's funny because Kate and I both love a good cocktail,
We
and
do.
I like it was a long time before I ever got to like make drinks for Kate. So
Oh, that's
but
funny.
we've had a few since then, so we
Yeah, a
worked it out.
few. Yeah.
It
Yeah.
it sounds like did either of you have acting experience prior to that show? I mean, to be put on this big, like CW is huge, right? I mean, that's a big show, big deal to get on that. And have them just write this character into the show. Was that a difficult thing to do? I mean, I don't know, maybe you both have acting backgrounds in some way.
I mean,
Not traditionally. I mean, I had been a theater kid casually, like I
Okay.
had done some plays and some musicals and always enjoyed acting, maybe taken an acting class here and there in like, just in the suburbs of Cleveland. Never thought, "Oh, this is my path." Like I was like signing a record deal was
Mhm.
my dream in
Yeah,
high
you
school
wanted to be a
and that was what
musician.
I wanted.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think that's probably why I wasn't nervous when I went to the auditions. I was like, "I'm not going to get this." But yeah, it's oddly, it's storytelling. You know, you're telling a story of somebody's life and their emotions, and there's a lot about acting that's similar to the vulnerability of songwriting, which I sort of discovered in real time along the way. What about you,
Okay.
Mike? You were a theater kid too, right?
Yeah, I was a theater kid. I actually studied theater in college, and then I studied theater and music, and then just really focused on music when I got out. But I don't think anything could prepare you for that. Like Kate and I were definitely like we were music people that were like transported to this world that we were completely
Right.
unprepared for. And it's a massively technical art form. It's like, and it's crazy. I mean, just the level of pressure on the set was wild. Like every time that, like every time it takes, there's like five people run up to you and like someone's putting makeup on you, someone's messing with your shirt, someone's messing with your microphone, and like all at the same time, like just people surround you and start touching you. And then they're like, all right, do it again. And you're like, what? Like, it was really overwhelming for me. So I think I was actually like blacked out for the majority of it. Like I don't, it was so wild. Um, but Kate and I finally got to do like scenes together, and it was like Kate was like such a rock star. Like I never thought that I would get to like work with her. You know what I mean? Because she was like, we talk about that time, and I'm like, yeah, man, like we had a really successful career. I sold like 40,000 records, and Kate's like, yep, I had a pretty good one too. Sold like 400,000 records. Like, um,
Wow.
like seeing her on the show, like she was just such a like star. You know what I mean? Like, I was kind of like scared of her. And then she's super nice, like super nice, but like, just this enigma of Kate. But I got over that, and we got to be like really good buds, and it was pretty cool.
Amazing. And when did you guys start really collaborating as far as music goes? It sounds like, I mean, you're both kind of thrown into the same situation where you were pursuing music, and then this thing happens where you're on this television show, but you also get to be musicians on this television show.
Yeah.
Where there probably weren't a lot of people that were in that position that were on the show where you kind of gravitated towards each other, like as far as like, oh, well, we both want to do music, but this is happening. But like, should we start writing together? Like, was that something that happened earlier? Or was that way down the line? I mean, obviously this project is new, so I'm just
Yeah.
curious.
It was more down the line, only because, well, I was on the show for 2 seasons, I think, before Mike came in. So I was like all by my lonesome, a babe in the woods. And then he came in and I was like, oh my God, I'm an alien. You're an alien. This is amazing. Like, because it was like a comrade in arms. It was just everybody, was great on the show, but it was like Mike said, it was a very like strange experience in some ways, for a million reasons, but just the being the only one who was sort of you know, just an outlier in the sense of being a musician who was there, in a different context. It was really cool to have somebody else in that position. And then we were fast friends, spent a lot of time hanging out together with the same friends in North Carolina where we filmed, but there was no time to like sit down and write a song, while we were working, because both of us would, as soon as we were done filming, we would leave to go tour or make an album or something. It was like living out of a suitcase. So we really, reconnected randomly to start writing music during the pandemic. We were both like, like everybody, kind of like trying to figure out how to spend our days, and reconnected through, I guess it was like was it like a podcast or one of those like live cast things? Like, I don't remember. What was that app everyone was
Clubhouse. Was it
using?
Clubhouse?
Clubhouse. That's what it was.
Clubhouse.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
We're doing
Yeah.
clubhouses. And I was doing one, and I invited Kate, I think, or we ended up in the same clubhouse. I don't know what it was. And
Yeah.
I remember I just like called you afterward. Like it's like Kate and I like have such a specific life experience. Like to go through our experience with this show and stuff is something that I think very few people would, you know, get lucky enough to do. You know what I
Right.
mean?
And
And
you both have a similar story in that too, right?
Yeah.
yeah. And it's like, there were parts of it that were awesome. There were parts of it that kind of sucked. And so for us to like Kate's really one of the only people in the world I can unpack that with. And so it's super cool. So anyway, I called her and was like, I miss you. And you know, we started talking and I was like, let's write a song together. Let's just do something over Zoom. And we did. And then we had a really good time. And I was like, hey, let's do that again. And Kate was like, yes, let's definitely do that again. And then we just kind of kept doing it. And then suddenly we were like, we've got a record here. And it's really cool. Um, and then I think one really interesting thing was project, like I had come from another project called Cheap Sense that was the opposite, where basically we wrote and recorded and put out a song a week. Like it was like
Wow.
every week we put out a song um, for an entire year. Like during the pandemic, it was pretty wild. It was really fun and really, I grew a lot, learned a lot about production and stuff. But with Kate and I think we know we both come with these kind of built-in fan bases, and we're like, let's really like take time to honor this and figure out what it is.
Mm.
Um, and so we did. It was a long process for us to get to the actual release stage for the project, which was great.
Wow. Yeah, because the show ended years before, not that, I mean, what, like 2008, 17 or 18 when the show ended?
Yeah, it's
So,
been a
so
long time.
yeah, so you weren't really in each other's, sphere anymore, like where you're seeing each other all the time. It just happened to land in the same clubhouse room, and it was like, oh, hey, it's been a while. Like, let's write a song together.
Yeah, totally. Which is common, like with musicians, you interview songwriters all the time. People,
Mhm.
it's just like a thing. It's like the musician version of getting a coffee or a drink. They're like,
Right.
let's write. And then
Yeah.
what's so funny is I'm sure you've heard people, say something similar is it is not a guarantee that you're going to collaborate well together as songwriters if you're good friends. Like, in fact, sometimes it is a detriment, at least for me collaborating with friends. Sometimes it's like, it's like trying to date somebody who, and you're like, whoa, this isn't a thing. And
Right.
then, so it's a rare thing when somebody is like a bud, like a really good friend, especially like Mike said, somebody who like Mike's one of the only people in the world who has this unique experience that I do, who understands these unique nuances of the crazy journey that we both went on with this show. And so it felt like almost too good to be true and crazy that we worked together so well. So we were like, oh, let's keep doing this. This is sweet. It's really, it's kind of when you hit that and you realize that magic is there, you're kind of like, well, it's like, it's our job now to sort of, get curious about what this is.
Mhm. When you first started, it was so you meet in the reconnect in this clubhouse thing, and it was like, oh yeah, let's do that. And it's the pandemic, so you're on Zoom like this.
Yeah.
And when what was that first meeting like? Was it like, oh, I have this tune, like let's start jamming on it, or like how do you even begin, kind of the project?
I
Man,
mean,
we
yeah.
we probably talked for like an hour and a half and
I
then
bet.
started an idea.
Yeah,
What have you
Kate
been
and
up
I
to?
always, anytime we get on to do business, like the first 20 minutes is just us, like kind of
Catching
chatting
up.
about stuff and catching up.
Yeah.
Um, and then I think somehow we just like I think maybe like I had some hook that I'd started, and Kate is so good at like refining and the lyric side of things, and like um yeah, the first songs is funny because it took a minute for us to find what we were gonna be, because I
Mhm.
think I approached this with the thought of like, Kate is so established as Kate Vogel in the music that she makes with that, and we were kind of like, what if we get a little weird? And what if we push that a little bit more? Because the Kate that I know is not, um, I don't know, just she's a lot more like a real complicated, human being with a lot to her. Like she's deep. And I was like, let's get there in the music. Not to suggest that your other music, Kate, isn't
Oh
deep
gosh,
enough
no. That's yeah.
everything, but just like I've never seen you like scream
Mhm.
and that happens in our music a lot.
It
Like,
does. It's
yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah, I was wondering because yeah, Kate, you're more of you have that singer-songwriter vibe. I mean, the songs are great, but this project is way different, and it's like going into like, oh, that must have been a fun experience. Just like, let's try to do something totally different than what we're used to putting out in a way.
Yeah, that was incredibly fun, is incredibly fun. And I think that all creatives and all artists, you know, have the need to sort of evolve and show and explore different angles of their creative voice, you know, over time. And for me, I think, you know, I'm so proud of everything I've put out, and also feel very lucky that all the music that I've released over the years, especially, you know, the music that was sort of the most publicly visible with the TV show and with Interscope, I had so much creative freedom. Like, I'm really proud of the fact that I was lucky to have a team that didn't ever shove me into that category of young female musician who's told who to be, what to say, what to look like. I had so much creative freedom. When I look back now, I'm like, man, I got lucky, because early 2000s, mid 2000s was like brutal for women in the
Oh
media
yeah.
and in, you know, all that. But I also feel like I always had this pressure, just as a young female in music, to be like this perfect role model somehow. And you know, I also grew up around a lot of like 90s, 2000s religion, and like both Mike and I have that background. I
Mhm.
always felt this pressure that like I can't, oh, I shouldn't, you know, curse in a song, or like don't ever say anything that might seem like, you know, you're promoting some sort of behavior that's not, you know, whatever, super responsible. And but I'm a really like I like to have fun. I think I was somebody who was really afraid to show different sides of myself for a while, because I just didn't know if that fit the narrative that the people, you know, at the top wanted me to embody. And this project has been such a fun way to really explore and expand on this side of me as a person and as a songwriter and as a musician, a performer, that's always been there. You know, my fans will definitely recognize some of the energy in this music, you know, as kind of relating to certain songs and certain kind of lyrical, you know, explorations on my older stuff. But this is like, there's just something so special about finding a collaborator in music who helps you bring that out in yourself, because I could not have done that just on my own in my studio. Oh, let me explore this side of who I am and what I have to say. You know, it really does require finding those collaborations with people who are able to help bring that out in you. And Mike is just such a ridiculously talented person, musician, you know, producer, songwriter, that it really was that made all the difference, you know, finding the right person to bring that out. So it's been a blast. Like I'm so proud of this project and these songs. They feel more like me than almost anything I've ever put out.
Wow, that's interesting. Yeah, just I mean, I love this. I've only heard, excuse me, I've only heard the two that you've put out thus far, um, on the project. But at what point did you feel like you kind of found the, you know, the sound that you're going for, like what the 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 album is gonna kind of feel like, or the vibe of the project is gonna be? Was there a handful of songs before, and then it was like, was there a song that you had written together that you're like, oh, this is what we should start shooting for?
Yeah, I feel like it was We've Got Places, right, Mike?
Yeah, that was the first one that we were like, huh, like this is a little different, because we did like lean into kind of like a more whispery, quiet thing for a
Mhm.
while, like just because it just, I don't know, I kind of just assumed that's what Kate and I were gonna sound like when we got together, and it just wasn't that, like, and we tried to do that. We wrote like 5 songs like that, and
Yeah.
then we wrote one that was like, that I think we did, We've Got Places, and it was like, oh, this is a lot, it's a lot cooler. It's got these big explosive, choruses and stuff. And that really, suddenly the drums got really big. Suddenly the guitars got really forward. And the whole vibe became much more experimental. It kind of like reminded me of, like I was lucky to like live on the Lower East Side in the early 2000s, like, you know
Mhm.
what I mean? And it reminded me of that energy where it was like a little bit, just dangerous, and there weren't a lot of rules, and we could just kind of do whatever we wanted to do.
Mm. And, so you have that song, and then do you write this whole album via Zoom and then get together after it's safe or whatever to record it all, or how did you kind of continue on with the project?
It really started via Zoom. We wrote We've Got Places in person. It was like,
Oh,
honestly,
okay.
I feel like we got all the, you know, we got in our reps over Zoom. We wrote like probably like 20 songs over Zoom, all of which were great songs. But I felt like then things, started opening up, thankfully, and I started coming to Austin to Mike's studio, and that's when we were really able to get together in person and sing the songs and explore them. And then we were like, what if we did this? What if we let it roll like even farther in that direction? And then I think that was sort of like, it was almost like we'd gotten all the I don't want to say cobwebs, because it wasn't something that had sat there. It was a new thing, but I sort of feel like we got like the marbles out of our mouth on Zoom writing a bunch of music, but then it was like, okay, now we can actually, get down to business and put these together in person in a way that, I mean, there's just no substitute for hanging out in a studio and, like being able to put things together, via a weekend hang. That really set us up, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, I think sometimes like writing over Zoom is almost like running with weights on. You know what I mean? Because you can't
Totally.
like like human communication is so much more than just visual and audible. Like there's so much stuff of like just being able to see what your whole body is doing, like how comfortable you are, how uncomfortable you are, and just all of that like the vibe thing is really is real. And so I think we basically trained and like ran with weights on, and then suddenly we found ourselves together unbridled from all of that, and it was just like so suddenly like organic and real, and there was just this explosion of stuff. And we'd also built the working language really well. Like I knew when to sit back and let Kate grab the reins, like I knew when I should push a little more, I knew, just. And then also like add our friendship to that, our shared experience, and all of that, it became like a really cool, just a really cool experience.
Mhm. So the stuff that you all did over Zoom just was kind of just the building blocks to then getting together, and it was like, okay, we have this one song, let's really phase or kind of go towards that, and that's then all new songs came out of that experience after the fact. So none of that stuff like on Zoom made it wasn't like there wasn't a full song on there that you're like, okay, let's record this. This will be great for the record.
I
There were
don't
a
know that
couple.
anything
There
we
were a
did
couple that
on
were pretty
Zoom.
badass, though. There were a couple that were really,
Yeah, there's
really
some
good
things that I
songs.
think could certainly make like a Kate Vogel project, like
Okay.
but which is really what's cool about, so often you go into a writing session or a studio session thinking you're making one thing, and you end up making something totally different, but in the best way. And so
Mhm.
I think that there's a lot of really good material there. We actually played one of those songs together at Art Basel in 2021, very end of 21, when things started to open up. We, you know, were like, let's test some of this stuff out. We had this gig, and it was a really cool showcase with this high-end audio company called Mark Levinson. Julia Michaels played at it, and we tested one of these songs that we had written on Zoom, and it was like it was a really intimate lounge concert, as a part of the whole festival. And like, I don't know how many people came up to me or wrote me on Instagram and were like, those lyrics like really spoke to me in a way that I can't express. And we were both like, even though that song in particular didn't end up making the album, I think it cemented our artistic direction of like, we write, like our voices together are capable of writing some, music that's is speaking to our fan base in a way that maybe we wouldn't have been able to do alone. We got to keep, chipping away at this and figure out what this band really is, because it's really special. So that was a cool moment.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I'm interested. That's surprising that you didn't. I mean, getting that response, you guys didn't use it on the album, or
I know, right? I mean, I don't know. Never say never. It hasn't come
Right.
out yet. The album hasn't come out yet, so it might
Yeah.
it may end up making, it might be a deep cut, B-side situation.
Sure, sure.
Those
And
those
how like
decisions are brutal too. Those decisions, I mean, like deciding to not use that song was brutal. Like I think
It's
like
hard.
'cause we both really loved it. It just didn't fit the landscape of what things became, and it
Yeah.
suddenly like threw the album out of balance. But I think
mm,
that's something that's cool that we can like the fact that we have kind of made all our mistakes and we've spent not all of them I'm sure but a lot of mistakes already, and we've learned a lot about how to make an album and balance an album and do all that, like that maturity hopefully will make the record better, and then we'll find another outlet for that song.
sure,
Definitely.
sure. How long did it take you to like have all the songs and finalize the album? It sounds like Kate, you were going to Austin to work with Michael in his studio, and was it a quite a few trips before you had, this whole batch of songs done?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'd say it was a good probably 10 trips at least. And we just really cared over making sure that this collection of songs and this band, you know, had a very specific artistic direction, and in a way that I think both of us talk about how we felt that we had the time and the space to do that for our first solo albums, or your first Wakey album, my first Kate Voegele album. And there's something really special about being able to take the time and the space to care over the artistic direction. And that's why there is this ruthlessness to saying, okay, we got to cut this song, okay, we got to write something else. And so we also just, it was a great hang. There's so much about those trips that were us taking taco breaks, and me and Mike and his partner who's fantastic, like going and checking out a local band at a bar, and like all of that contributes, I think, to just the ability to really get this authentic creative energy, where you can zero in on what this sound is. And so it took a good, I don't know, I would say almost 2 years probably of going back and forth. And I don't know how many times I've lost track, but it's all been great.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
love that you did an album. I mean, I feel like that's an art form that's been lost unless you're, Taylor Swift or somebody like huge. It's mainly artists are just putting out a single and then a single. And then once four are done, it's like, here's my EP with the fifth single. And now it's you know what I mean? Like the fact that you are guys are going out and with an album right away. That's, I have a lot of respect for that. I think that's awesome. Was that always the decision?
I think like we had a lot of conversations about how to roll it out. You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
um, I spend a lot of time. Like, I also work in the industry side of music a lot, and so I help a lot of bands kind of craft rollouts and talk about how they're going to do stuff. And with this, kind of the thought that we had was we want it to be a statement. We want it to be more like we spent a lot of time crafting this music. We put a lot of love and a lot of care into this, and we wanted it to we wanted to respect that time that we put into it by making it a full piece, like making it a full real album. Like this isn't something that we spent a few, knocked it out in a quick session. I knocked
Mhm.
out the rest of the production and we threw it up to, do whatever. Like we spent like weeks on each one of these songs to make them what they are. And so we wanted to really honor that by making it a full record.
Love that. Going into the songs that are on the album, was it like lyrically and everything? Were you both kind of in a different headspace than the songs that you, if like a Kate Vogel album, a Wakey record, was that like, okay, like, how did you come up with, I guess concepts in the songs? Did you write everything kind of together and we're like, oh, this is the direction we should go as far as lyrically and vibe and all of that?
I think actually the funny thing is some of the songs that didn't work for it might have been either Kate making too much room for me or me making too much room for Kate. You know what I mean?
Well
So
said.
like, or it came out more like a Wakey Wakey song or more like a Kate Vogel song. And so that's like, you know, where when we finally, I think all of the songs on the record are like, we started like, maybe I made some kind of loop or something and we just vibed to it and literally just wrote it on the spot together. It wasn't like we were coming with like a pocket full of concepts. Like it
Okay.
was really exploratory.
That's cool. Yeah, I would imagine it would be hard to kind of separate the two if you're writing a song at home and then you bring it and say, "Oh, here, Kate," and then it wouldn't sound like a Kate Vogel song or a Wakey Wakey song because
Yeah.
that's just the space you've probably been in for such a long time.
Yeah.
So that you have is it another the only one's the next single that's coming out, or is that
Yeah.
okay? So tell me, I want to hear about Pretty and we talked a little bit about we've got places, but tell me because that's the song currently, right? And then the next one
Mhm.
doesn't come out till about a month or so.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, the first song we put out was We've Got Places, which again was kind of like a real birthplace for the project. And then Pretty, which was kind of, I don't know if Pretty was just to warn people that this was not going to be a regular record for
It's
Kate
much
Vogel or Ricky
different.
Bobby.
Yeah, it's much
Yeah.
even different from that first song.
Yeah, like yeah, and it definitely I think the next song is definitely the chillest song on the record. It's the prettiest song on the record. And the most like sensitive, you know. I don't know,
Hmm.
it's like it's I don't know, I really love all of them, but this next one is one of my favorites too. But it is like more chill. And then we're putting out the full record with like our big banger, like the one that's like a real party song. So
Okay.
um yeah, but it is definitely like, you know, I enjoy records and I really enjoy party albums like, you know, like the really good LCD sound system
Sounds
records
yeah.
where you can literally put the vinyl on at a party and no one will complain. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like front to back, every song is rad. It's super fun. Like, and that's what we wanted to create with this. And it really is kind of like a party record where it never stops. Once it starts, it's like, you know, We've Got Places is actually probably one of the more calm sides of the record.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
And do you have a date for the album coming out, or are you still kind of trying to figure that one out?
Um, I don't know, Kate, do you want to say? I mean, we talked about
We are
one.
like still, I don't know. What do you think? Because we've been like workshopping dates for the
Mm.
Yeah.
summer, but I don't
We,
know. Do we want to commit to a date?
I don't, I'm afraid to commit
I know.
You don't have to. I don't want to put you on
Yeah.
the spot, but I didn't know if you're like, okay, we already know it's gonna come out on this date.
I think
No,
it's
no,
a,
I
yeah.
appreciate it. Yeah,
The
it's
plan is June. Yeah, I realize we're supposed to come with all these things in our
indeed.
pocket, but
No, it doesn't.
yeah, the we're rejecting media training at this point. The,
Great, because
yeah,
this isn't like very
uh,
structured as far as that goes. I came from
yeah,
terrestrial radio, so that was so nightmarish. Where this conversation we've been talking for 50 minutes, and it would be cut into like 45 seconds. So
yeah,
that's why
totally.
I love the podcast format. So yeah, don't feel pressured into just giving me
No, it's
some
less pressure. It's more just we're like artists, and we're kind of putting on our industry hat, trying to say, okay, how do we roll this out in a way that, I mean, we're targeting late June. We're hoping
Okay.
we're hoping for a June 28th, but
We're
it's not
holding you to
that.
that date, June 20th. I'm putting.
All
Just
right.
kidding.
Perfect. Hey, look, sometimes, like I said, like getting up at 8 a.m. for a podcast, sometimes we artists, creatives, we need like somebody to be like, yo, this is the date, get it done,
Yeah,
So
do it,
So
put it
we've
out.
been so excited to put this out forever. It's like, yeah,
uh,
we're ready.
amazing. Are you doing? I know you've played shows, obviously, but is the idea to support the album like over the summer, or as far as like a tour?
We are definitely we definitely want to put together at least a listening party or two where we can play some of the music to celebrate the album coming out with our fans, because people have been, hitting us up nonstop since We've
Hmm.
Got Places came out. When's the tour? We'd love nothing more than to take this band on the road. We're just, working out what that looks like. We'll be previewing a couple of the songs in May. We're getting together actually the day that The Only One comes out, the next single, May 17th, Mike and I both will be in North Carolina, kind of doing a reunion with some of our friends from the TV show. So we thought, what a
That's
better
cool.
way to just give these fans, this fan base who's been so incredible and so loyal and supportive to us over the years, you know, to give them sort of a first taste of what this band sounds like live. So that's going to be kind of just a tiny little teaser, and then we're ready to get hard at work figuring out what the plan is with touring, because we're like, I can't wait to play this music at like a rock club in London or Paris or wherever.
Or
Like,
Nashville.
it's Nashville. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Love Nashville.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate both of you doing this today. This has been so fun. Again, thank you for getting up at early, Kate. And
Oh, anytime.
Michael,
I'm
I
here for
appreciate
it.
your time. I have one more question. I want to get an answer from both of you, if that's cool. I want to know if you have any advice for aspiring artists.
Mike, you take this one first. You're industry guy.
Oh man, advice for aspiring artists. It's like so much advice. I don't even know which one to do. You know what I mean? Like,
Stage is yours.
I think just be really aware of who is influencing your musical choices. Like be really aware of like who you're trying to please and what you're trying to do, and make sure that pleasing yourself is you know, making sure you honor your own, you know, artistic vision. Don't get lost in trying to, you know, make music for someone else. Like make it for yourself, because you never know what song is going to take off, and you're going to have to play that song every day for the rest of your life. And the nature of music is that the first record that you put out often kind of becomes a little bit of it becomes a home, and it also becomes kind of like a cage that you live in for the length of your career. So just make sure that you like the wallpaper in there.
Love it. Love it. What about you,
Great
Kate?
advice. Yeah, I would add to that. For me, one of the things that was a huge struggle when I was just starting out was I would put so much pressure on myself every time I sat down to write a song, and wanting it to be a hit song. You know, my manager would be like, okay, we just need another hit song, or we need a breakup song, or this. And my advice would be, don't be precious about what you're creating. You just got to get in the reps, like sit down to your whatever it is, your laptop, with your guitar, at your keyboard, whatever you're creating with, and just make stuff. Like make stuff constantly, and do not worry about every single thing needing to be, you know, don't be precious with everything needing to be this, you know, the next single or this and that, because this band is a great testament. Mike and I are pros, you know, we've both been musicians as, you know, our main career for 15, 20 years plus. And, you know, this band, we just had fun, and we made a million songs. You know, we wrote a million songs, we hung out, and it's interesting because there's this dynamic where you don't want to put pressure on it, but you want to care over it, but they're not the same thing. You know, you can't have those voices in your head of, like Mike said, you know, you have to write the perfect song for TikTok. I'm sure every young artist is trying to write the next TikTok song. Obviously, we all want our song to blow up on whatever the platform is that, you know, that everybody's on. But I think it's just about creating from a place of curiosity and fun, and remembering why you love to do it, and doing it a ton, just creating a ton of stuff. And that will, I do believe the muse will show up at your door if you show up consistently, just making stuff for the sake of making stuff.
Bringing it back.